What should the age of criminal responsibility be? Should a murderer convicted as a child be given a second chance once their sentence is served? Here in the United Kingdom, famously in the case of the killers of Jamie Bulger, that second chance exists, albeit under licence and with much supervision. In many states in America, a life sentence without parole is the norm, even for juveniles. And for murder, which is more broadly defined in many states than in Britain, life does indeed mean life. The Supreme Court is now looking again at the law, but as it stands, there are thousands sentenced as children who are now spending almost all their entire lives in prison and who will die there. This special report from Damitha Luthra.
Meet two men, convicted as children. Both have different stories. Both got the same sentence. In America, for murder, children are treated as adults. A lifetime behind bars. But should they get a second chance? Almost 2 decades ago, when only 14, Alphonso Smalls made a choice he can never undo.
I can't even put in words the regret I feel.
Outside this supermarket, urged on by his 18-year-old friend, Alphonso took part in the carjacking of Dorothy Lewis and her 2 young daughters. At gunpoint, they drove them to this isolated road. It was here that Dorothy Lewis was raped, shot and left for dead. Alphonso Smalls and his friend then drove a bit further with 3-year-old Jasmine and 7-year-old Jamelia in the back of the car, screaming for their mother. They were then shot in the head and their bodies thrown into the bushes. It was a truly brutal crime. Alphonso's 18-year-old friend Richard Henyard was executed. Alphonso was too young for the death penalty, so he was sentenced to life without parole. Barbed wire's your daily life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now at 32, Alphonso says he looks back on what he did with horror.
For the part I played, I hold 100% responsible for myself for what I did. I did that. He didn't, he didn't hold me by my hand and walk me to that car. I walked to that car on my own.
Why do you think you deserve a second chance?
The nature of the crime says, no, I don't deserve another chance. But I would like to be given another chance, not to say that I will.
Across America, there are thousands who've been sentenced when children to grow up, grow old, and die in prison. We got rare prison access in Florida. These boys are awaiting trial, so we can't show you their faces. They're too young to vote, they're too young to drink. But for murder, children as young as 13 are considered adults. The Supreme Court is deciding whether to change that. No other country has juveniles serving life without parole. In Britain, no one can forget the murder of toddler Jamie Bulger. His young killers both served 8 years in custody and got a chance for rehabilitation. In America, the system says Alphonso can never be released.
My biggest fear is never getting out, is dying in prison. That's really the only fear I have.
Dorothy Lewis survived the attack by Alphonso and his friend, despite being shot in the head 3 times. Do you think that, given that he was 14 at the time, he deserves the hope of a second chance?
I think his second chance is having life. That's how I feel about that. I mean, he was 14, but he knew what he was doing. So he still has hope. He has hope because he's living. My daughters aren't.
We actually have some video of him, so maybe we could show that to you, and you can tell us what you think.
I'd like that.
Yeah?
Yes.
That's what he looks like now. This is the first time Dorothy has seen Alphonso since the trial. What would you say to Dorothy Lewis if she was sitting here?
All I can do is apologize. Which, a mere apology, they can't bring back a loss. But the only thing I can do is apologize and ask that she forgive me for what happened. That's all I have nothing else to offer.
He says that he deserves a second chance. And again, I feel like him having his life is a second chance. And he wants to know how could he prove that he's being rehabilitated if he doesn't have a chance to get out in society. Well, he can prove that where he is. And I'm glad that he knows what he did is wrong. I'm glad he, manned up to that. But I think he needs to stay where he is.
It's hard not to agree with Dorothy. It's almost impossible to empathize with Alfonso. On such a crime, most people's instinct is, let's just throw away the key. In Florida, there's no sentencing discretion. A judge has no choice once a person is found guilty.
Sometimes you need discretion. That's what judging is all about, is discretion. Looking at each case separately and the facts surrounding it separately, and then making a decision on those facts. And mandatory sentences do not provide that.
It was here that Judge Hill sentenced Alfonso, and it was also here he sentenced Devin Jarrett. At 16, Devin was charged with felony murder. A robbery went wrong. Devin's friend killed a man. Devin didn't pull the trigger. He was sitting in the back of the getaway car. But in Florida, it doesn't matter. Felony murder means he was there, he was involved. That's automatically a lifetime in jail with no review.
I don't think they're going to have me here forever, because I ain't killed nobody, That was my one thing. I could see if I killed somebody, but I ain't killed nobody.
Devin's childhood was difficult. His father was a junkie. His mother tried to protect him. He says he got in with the wrong crowd. He wanted to be cool.
I understand now as an adult that an adolescent is quick to rush into things without thinking, but an adult take his time and make rational decisions about what he do. And on impulse, when I was a teenager, I jumped into things that I really didn't see through.
This legal child seated next to me is Devin Jarrett.
At his trial, Devin was confronted with the consequences of his actions. 16 years on, he still talks about, if only.
If I could change the whole scenario, if I could change everything that led up to them events, I'd go back and take every one of them back. I listen to my mother. I do anything possible to make that happen.
If you had had discretion, would you have sentenced Devin differently?
At the time, I may have just gone ahead and sentenced him to life. But as I sat on the bench longer, seen more cases, seen the studies about children and how they think differently than you and I, today, I may not have. But Alfonso Smalls, not that crime. And particularly after what they did after the crime. As a trophy, they were showing her undergarments to say, we got a bitch tonight. Very cruel, very heartless, very cold.
Now the Supreme Court has to decide whether Alfonso and others deserve the hope of a second chance. Alfonso's actions were horrific, but he was also this boy. Just 3 months before the crime, he'd written this note in class.
Goals for the year. Hi, my name is Alfonso Smalls. I plan on not getting in trouble no more. I hope to make the honor roll this year. The reason I made bad grades last year is because I never did my work. I never did my homework. I always was talking in class. But I plan on making this a better year Well, I'm running out of words to say, so bye. Alfonso Small. Wow. It was a long time ago, yeah.
A haunting message to the man from the boy. He can hardly remember that moment of innocence. Life without parole is a final judgment. It doesn't allow for change, and right now in America, it doesn't allow for age. Demetha Luthra, Channel 4 News, Florida.